Ray Power is with us now, which is great news. So let's first of all say good afternoon to Ray. Hi, Ray.
Good afternoon, folks. How are you?
Yeah, we're very well indeed.
Good afternoon.
And with the work that you've done with making the ball roll, the deliberate soccer practice series, and now, of course, coaching youth football, what soccer coaches can learn from the professional game, is your latest and terrifically
Correct.
Put together simply as well for the people
Thank you.
Want to. And I'll come on and talk about that later. But I want to talk first of all here just a little bit about you. You know, you've been involved in academies and elsewhere. You've done coaching abroad, and you made the decision early. And now that you've got all the licenses that you need, it's been coaching that was always going to be forefront for you.
Yeah, that's right. Probably always is a stretch, because I went to university and actually became a teacher, a proper suit and tie classroom teacher. But as the guys will tell you, when you're obsessed with the game, there's nothing like it. So it kind of came apparent when you wake up and you wait for Friday, you wake up and you wait for the games on Saturday, you wake up and you hope it's a Tuesday with the Champions League on or something. So it was literally a decision I made whilst teaching to step away from that, if you can do as a coach, but step away from that classroom environment and devote, I guess, myself to coaching. So that feels like a long time ago. That was over a decade ago. And of course you can bring a lot of transferable stuff from teaching to coaching. And I've probably worked with every level of player, from sort of non-league to international youth players. So it's been quite a journey, and the books have helped me kind of learn as much as teach.
And what is it that, and a lot of this to help teach the coaches too, isn't it? So what
Yes.
what do you think, and there's an awful lot of people I know wanted to listen to you this afternoon. If we could just sort of start before we go into some of the topics that I know are important to you and what they have to do, is first of all, the coach that isn't a professional but can learn from the professional game. What is it, do you find, that those coaches, one great place for them to start?
Oh wow, one great place. I mean, I think it all circles back to how willing you are to learn and how willing you are to be wrong, to make mistakes, to trial and error. There's always been this, and it's decreasing, but there's always been this thing about football where it's quite territorial and it's quite macho sometimes, and you never admit to when you're wrong. You don't admit to not knowing something. And obviously, if you carry on like that in any profession, you don't get better, and you stagnate, and you kind of settle for things that you already know. So one of the things that I kind of opened my new book with is something that hit me probably about 6 months ago, and that was our lens, and I call it our football lens or our coaching lens, which is basically that your experiences of the game and in the game will initially shape how you coach. So for coaches who weren't professional players or weren't embedded in that environment, the first thing we do is copy what was done with us, and that could be 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But I just think there's so much out there now. There's with social media, with chat groups and books and documentaries. There's so much out there that you can learn from and take that, add layers to your trade to make the players better.
Talk us a bit then, with that in mind, with a lot of people perhaps have their own ideas, and then you write, about coaching within the learning zone.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean? What do you really mean by that?
Yeah, that sounds a little bit technical, more than it should be. I suppose it's when we're in our comfort zone in any environment, it's a good thing. Being in your comfort zone is safe. That's what it's for. However, when you kind of refuse to leave that and you refuse to push the boundaries, you're at the risk of just repeating all the stuff you've done before. So that they say, there's a saying around coaching that, have you got 10 years experience, or have you 1 year experience 10 times? So the point being in that respect is, can you push those boundaries a little bit? Can you be open to feedback, open to mentoring, open to learning, and open to that, your lens being challenged? And I guess it all feeds into growth mindset stuff. Now, you can't take it too far where you become so uncomfortable, like in any walk of life, where you become so uncomfortable with what you're doing that you end up in a further zone where you end up panicking, or you've got problems. So stretching that comfort zone to zones where you're learning, where you are doing things like trial and error and all those type of things to, I don't know if you ever arrive at the magic formula, but certainly get you closer to a better understanding and a better view of the game.
And that is all part of this, as you've mentioned there, then the coaching lens, just that first topic of yours, where in the end it's challenging yourself as much as then your ability to challenge your players. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it was actually in Singapore about 6 months ago, where I was given a kind of an unenviable task of watching a national youth team on the Monday or Tuesday night, and feeding back to the federation and about 20 other federations the following morning. So it was really a case of sort of being parachuted in, and trying to provide this, I don't know, condensed view of something I knew very little about other than this one game. And as I was putting this presentation together, I kind of thought to myself, well, if Pep Guardiola was watching this game, his lens would be, we'll say, for argument's sake, possession football and stopping counter-attacks. Jurgen Klopp watches it and he looks at it from the point of his heavy metal stuff, his counter-pressing and so on. Jose Mourinho looked at the compactness of the team. So we all have these different lenses that we're looking at it through. But if we have enough empathy and we have enough learning and avenues to go down where we look through other lenses, or we allow our lenses to be developed, then we get, like in any form of life, you get better.
And just one more before Danny and Ray start coming in to talk from the professional aspect with you about this, Ray, for me as well. How, at whatever level you are coaching, whether it be young boys or girls, and then or just a little older, or those that have got a really good future in the game, or those within the game at certain stages, how do you quickly decide what they can do with what you can offer and not do too much, but wanting them to do a little more, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It's the analogy I use is a primary school teacher. So if let's say a primary school teacher has a degree in math, you don't bring your degree level math to a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old. You select what's best for them and what they're able for, and what pushes them from the point they're at to the, further down the line. So if that teacher was to sit in a university lecture hall and give a lecture, he or she could do it, but has the skill set to take that right down the chain. For me, there's 3 things you look at when you're doing that, when you're coaching. Are you level specific? Are you age specific? And are you group or individual specific? So are you meeting those 3 needs? So the stuff Danny and Ray would have done as 28-year-old pros, if you're going to bring that down to your under 10s, then there's probably you understand there's probably a mismatch. Or if you take it to your C League team at under 15 and expect them to pass and move as such, it's it's not going to work. So you've got to find them where they are and take them from there, as a friend of mine always says. So that's broadly, that's your first port of call. Your first port of call is where are these players?
Danny, right?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think one of the biggest problems is, and obviously I was involved in the commission stuff that looked at all the academies across this country, abroad, and how we can improve grassroots football, especially. And one of the biggest things that we came across is, for all these amazing volunteers, dads, grandparents, mums, aunties, uncles, that give up their spare time, a lot of people coach kids as they would be coached now. They talk to kids like they're talking to an adult, and that's one of the biggest problems that you get. You know, you've got to come down to the kids' level, you know, as Ray's just said, and talk to them on their level, talk about what's appropriate for them. And I found that very, very difficult when I did my UEFA B licence at Manchester City's academy, just as I was finishing. I was working with their under-17s, under-18s. Jim Cassell was the academy manager at the time and allowed me to coach their team. Fabulous coach. And I tried to put on a third-man running session, you know, with a little bit of a switch of playing an up, back and through and that type of thing. And Jim just pulled me to one side and he went, "I'm sorry, Dan." He said, "You're going to have to modify that because these lads aren't up to that. They can't do it." And I suddenly went, wow. This is Man City's under-17s, under-18s that I was looking at the time, and they were, you know, he said it'll just break down too often. He said you have to simplify it and do something different, and that was a very quick learning process for me to go, hang on, yes, you know, I can't coach, although they're at an oppression academy, I can't even coach these lads, you know, like they've been in the game at 25, 26.
Yeah, absolutely, and Danny, you were in some ways fortunate that you had someone like Jim there that could give you that sort of instant feedback, because you often see sessions like that, and I'll put my hand up, when I started coaching I would have done the same, where instead of modifying what you're doing, you crack on and you're there an hour later and you're pulling your hair out, and
I don't have any, it's all right.
Yeah, I know I shouldn't have said that, but you are though, you're thinking, and then you start to get into a really negative place with players, and you start to snipe a little bit, and everything kind of falls apart, and the environment is gone, and this type of thing. So you're absolutely right in what you say about you know, ensuring that you're appropriate. It is a problem when, similar to you, I think, when you parachute in for a one-off, or you know, a couple of times. Yeah. And
well, I know when obviously Gareth Southgate's a good friend of mine. I know when Gareth took the Middlesbrough job, and he'll openly admit it. You know, it came a little bit too early. It was a little bit of surprise, but it was an opportunity that he couldn't turn down. And he had this idealistic way of playing that he wanted to play at Middlesbrough. But of course, the chairman said, "You've got to cut the wage bill. You've got to get rid of these players. These are the players you've got available." And all of a sudden, overnight, his idealistic way that he wanted to play football, the way that he wanted to coach, he had to adapt completely. You know, and a lot of those ideals have to go out of the way. And, you know, Pep Guardiola says he can only play that way because he has some of the best players in the world that can do it.
Sure.
I think it's difficult, and I think that's what professional players, you've even at a high level, when you come down, you're adapting to those lower levels and asking players to do things that they simply can't do is incredibly frustrating. And if you're not adaptable, that's where a lot of them fail. And that goes right down to kids, doesn't it, all the way through?
It does, for sure. And you mentioned earlier about how you speak to them, how you work with them. The age appropriate sounds a little bit kind of over the top, but if we think about it on a different level, if you're back to that primary school teacher and you know, they go into a classroom of 10-year-olds and scream and shout at them for an hour about what they're doing wrong and why they're not doing it right, and my university kids can do this, why can't you? It's you take your kid out of that classroom as a parent or anyone else who with a vested interest. So it is the critical part of the game, and of course you've got social stuff, which is vastly different in different ages, different places, psychological stuff, physical stuff, with different generations as well.
Ray, I just want to ask you.
Ray. Sorry. We've got a break. Ray, I promise I'll come back to Ray Houghton to ask something of Ray Power, who has a special guest throughout the hour here in just a moment.